In this video today, I'm going to show you how to make some simple labels to add to your slow stitching and embroidery projects. So we're going to talk all about letters today. Just before I do that, I want to say a big thank you to those of you who hit the super thanks button. Lots of you on our recent Stitching Around the World for World Embroidery Day video. You're really enjoying that one. Do check it out if you haven't seen it. Your names are going across the bottom of the screen now. Thank you so much. You can see that button below the video. It looks like this one here if you've enjoyed a video and you want to show your appreciation. And of course, always to our channel members and our Patreons as well, who help to pay for the equipment and get lots of extra content in return. So thank you to you. Also, if you're interested in joining one of those, you can see details about that in the description below this video. So I'm going to show you my little sampler first. I'll show you to this camera because it's quite long. This is from my forest sampler class that we did recently, beginning of the year. A little mushroom sampler, and we've got some letters on this. We've got some little labels on this. So I'm going to show you under this camera here. So this is what we're looking at doing today. So we've got a little mushroom there, got fungi, got forest, because we were doing a forest stitching class, and forage as well. Did a little bit of foraging for some materials to use in our samplers. So we're looking at small letters today, so we can make small labels to go on our projects, not just for your slow stitching, any embroidery project you want to add a label to. We've got loads of videos on larger letters and how to do lettering and how to do words. We've got some free alphabets as well. You can check out our playlist on that. Lots of videos on how to do that. So today we're just going to look at small letters and making small labels. And as usual, I've got a PDF for you. I'm not expecting you to magic some letters up from out of thin air. So I've got some alphabets that I have made for you. I've just picked a few from a word processing computer program. You can just put in the word that you want to use. You can change the font of the lettering. You can make it bigger and smaller. So it's easy to do yourself. But if you don't have access to that, you're not able to do that, I've got a free PDF for you. That's available from the free stuff page of the website. That's also in a link below this video if you want to click on that and download this and have some letters to use. And I'm going to use these today to show you how to make these labels. So I just want to jump back to this for a moment and just have a closer look at what I've actually done with these labels. So you'll see I have done them on a plain background. I've done my stitching on a plain background, and then I've put something a bit decorative behind. Just makes your label and your words stand out a bit. If you might want to put a date on there or somebody's name on a piece of embroidery, and it just makes it stand out if you do that plain background. So I've done the same here, and then I've got this decorative one behind it. You can add stitching to it to make it a little bit more interesting. The same with the fungi. It doesn't have to be a light cream coloured background or white. It can be a different colour as well. I'll talk about colours of threads later. And then I've got my mushroom one as well on a fairly pale background. So I'm going to show you a few fabrics that are good to use for your labels. So I've just pulled a random selection out of my box here, and I just talked through what I've got and why it's good and not good. So there's some patterned ones here. So as I've just mentioned, you want your words, your label to pop out so that you can read it. And you can do it on these patterned fabrics, but it's a little bit harder to see the lettering unless you're using a really, really bright thread against the background. So I would tend to leave these patterned ones. Got a little spotty one, that's quite pale, so you'd probably get away with that one, and that one as well, that's stripes. But I would tend to leave the patterned ones for the background and maybe something a little bit plainer to actually do your stitching on. As I said, it doesn't have to be white, it can be a colour because you can use a contrasting thread if you want to. So it's a nice green one. This has got a bit of a sort of mottled kind of pattern on it, but it's a little bit darker as well, but it is fairly plain. You could use a nice bright colour on that to be able to read it. I've got a pink one there as well, which is a nice pale pink, just to add a bit of colour, and you can match it to the stitching that you're doing. And I'm going to put it on our stitch sampler. This is the one that we've been doing the videos on. We've been learning lots of stitches on this. Lots of you are joining in with this project. You can check this one out on the channel if you don't know what this is and you want to have a go. So I'm going to do it on this one. So I'll show you how I've picked my colours. I've got all natural fabrics here. I've got linens and cottons. Quilting cottons are quite good. I'm going to actually fray my edges in a sort of slow stitching way, but I'll show you how you can fold them under as well if you don't like the raw edge. So just think about the fabric you want to use, maybe nothing too shiny or something that frays like mad. So cottons and natural fabrics are really nice kind of fabrics to use for this. Okay, so we need to get our letters and our words onto our fabric. So we'll need that PDF or some other words from somewhere else if you found something that you like and you want to copy those. So I just picked a plain white cotton fabric here just to show you on the camera. It's easiest to see through this. So I'm not worrying about the size of my label at the moment. I'm going to put my words on and then I'm going to cut it out afterwards. That might seem a little strange, but I'll explain why in a second. So I'm going to trace them onto here. Now you can see them through this fabric, but I will use a light box to put them on. You can use a window as well. If you don't have a light box, have them light shining through and you'll see them much more clearly. We do have other ways of transferring a design. If you're using something that's maybe a little bit darker than this, you can check out our video on that. You could use some carbon paper if you want to. Prick and pounce is probably a little bit small for this, is probably a little bit intricate for that. So you can trace, you could use carbon paper. You could freehand it as well, or you could use the trace and tack. I always have to think about that. Yeah, trace and tack method as well. So check that video out if you want a different way of doing it. And I'm just going to use a waterproof fine liner. It's a very fine one, this, and because I'm going to stitch over my letters, you can use a water erasable one if you're not so confident that you're going to stitch over it. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to place this over my paper. I'm going to turn my light box on and then I'm going to start to trace my letters. So I'm just doing my letters right in the middle of my fabric. We'll make it the right size later. Nice and carefully over your letters, nice fine line. Just move it to the next letter. Leave yourself enough space between them so that you've got room for the stitches, and just carefully draw all the letters that you need. So the great thing about doing it this way is if you mess it up at this stage, you can just get another piece of fabric and do it again. Or you can have a little practice. If you're not confident with your drawing, just get a bit of scrap fabric and just practice drawing those letters so that you're nice and confident. So this is the one that I have drawn. So I've just written slow stitch, and you can see I've done one above the other. So you can make yourself a sort of thin, long one if you like, or you can do it long along the length of your fabric, whatever shape you want to fit your embroidery. You can do a whole section of text if you want to. You could do a poem, or there's so many things you could do with this. We're just going to stick to something nice and simple. So I've just done slow stitch there. Got some different fonts on that PDF as well if you want to try something a bit different. I also tried embroidery in one of the different fonts there. As I mentioned, just space those letters out a little bit. When you do your stitching, they will just get a little bit thicker. If you do them too close, they'll all mush into one. So just make sure you space your letters out before you stitch. This is the word that I'm actually going to show you. I'm going to do the word sampler to stitch on my little sampler. And I've actually cut this down to size now, so it's much easier to draw it first and then to cut your label and think, oh, now how do I get the words in the middle? Do the words first, then cut it to size. Much easier to do that. And I'm going to put a background behind it. I can put that straight onto my sampler if I want, but to make it more interesting, a little background is nice. I've just got a couple I've cut here. So I've done a plain one, nice pale green one, and I've just made it a little bit bigger than my label. So that's a nice subtle one, really nice sort of pale colour. If you want it to stand out a little bit, you can do it on a nice bright colour. You can pick a colour that's on the piece you want to add your label onto. So I think I'm going to do that one because I've already tried it on my sample. I think that looks quite nice. I've left these edges raw. I quite like that in slow stitching, not to worry about the edges and making nice, neat, finished edges and everything that goes with that. Slow stitching is about being in the moment, enjoying the stitching and not really worrying about precision and being precise. But if you don't want that and that's not appropriate for the piece you want to use, you can fold your edges under. So I've just done a quick one here to show you. That's me testing the pen. Do test the pen on your fabric if you've not used it before. And then I've just folded that in and ironed it, folded that under and ironed it, and then the ends as well. And I've made myself a little label that's got nice neat edges on it. So if you do want that, you can allow yourself a bit of extra fabric, fold it under, and then you don't have raw edges showing. So I'm going to put it on this section of my sampler here, and I'm going to put it in this little space. I'm going to overlap it just because I think that's more interesting. So I've got my nice bright colour underneath. I'm just going to quickly show you what it's like with the green. You can decide, oops, that way up, which one you prefer. That's quite nice and subtle. This is a bit in your face, but so you can see it clearly, I'm going to go for in your face. And then I'm going to stitch these down and then stitch the lettering. You can stitch the lettering first if you want to. I suggest you have a bigger piece of fabric. You can put in a hoop to stitch it. because it's very small, it's hard to stitch in your hands. But I'm going to stitch this down, then do the letters, and I'll stitch the letters through all of the layers of this, and it makes it nice and secure. I will show you one at the end on the mushroom sampler that I have done the other way, so you can see the difference between the two, but I'm going to do it this way. So I'm just going to pin it in place. Just a couple to hold it where I want it. You can decide if you like the look of that before you've done any stitching, so it's really great. You can work it all out beforehand. And I'm going to stitch my letters in a dark green. I think that complements it quite nicely, and it goes with the rest of my sampler quite nicely. So you want to pick something out from the piece that you're stitching on and make it all look like it's tied in this, not just a label stuck on the top that doesn't have any relevance to it. So choose your colours carefully, pick a colour from your colour scheme. I'm doing it quite dark, A, so you can see it, and B, so it stands out nicely on the sampler. If I was going to do it on the green one, I might do it in a kind of a red colour to pick up these roses. So it will change depending on what fabric you put behind and how much you want to see it. I'm going to use 2 strands of stranded cotton for this, just because most people have got stranded cotton, so I'm going to show you in that, but you can try other threads as well. It doesn't have to be stranded cotton. You could use a perle, the Burmalana threads are nice, you could try linen thread. Just practice a little bit beforehand if you're not sure what it's going to look like. These letters are quite small, so you need something quite fine. You could go to 1 strand if you want something really detailed. I'm going to do 2 so you can see it. And I've just put a knot in the end there, and I'm just going to start by taking that between the layers of my fabric on this sampler, and I'm just going to come up right in the corner like so. The knot will hide in the middle so it won't come undone. It's nice and secure, and I'm going to just work a stitch all the way around the outside. That's so 2 layers and 2 of my backing, and then I can just stitch my letters. You can do any number of stitches you like around here, so you could do a running stitch around the edge. Let's bring the sampler in here. You could do, so there's my running stitch, you could do a back stitch around the edge, you could do something decorative like a herringbone or a feather stitch. We've got a bit of chain stitch here. So any stitch you like around the edge is absolutely fine. I'm going to do a back stitch. Nice simple one just to show you what it looked like. So I'm going to go all the way around the edge, doesn't matter which way around I go. So I shall stitch that and then I'll come back and show you how to do the letters. So I've been all the way round with my back stitch, so everything's nice and secure. It's all stitched together. I'm just going to show you quickly how I finish off that thread on the back. So just over a couple of times. So it's got a backing fabric on it, so I can just pick up a little bit of that backing fabric 2 or 3 times inside the loop. Pull it tight, cut it off so it's all nice and neat and tidy. So that's what it looks like now. So now we can do the actual stitching of the letters. Now I'm going to just put that in a hoop. It's just a little bit easier to show you on the camera. You can do it in your hand, you can do it in a hoop, whatever your project you're working this on. And I've decided I'm going to stitch the letters in red. I was going to do it in green as well, but I thought I'll just switch it up a bit. Do it in red. No other reason. So I'm going to start from underneath, and I'm going to use the same stitch as I did to go around the edge. Now there's not many stitches you can use to do something really small. You're trying to make a continuous line of stitching. You could try a little bit of stem stitch if you want to. Doesn't work so well on the smaller letters, so I found back stitch works really well. So I'm just going to stick to a back stitch. I'm going to come up on the end of my first letter. Now make sure you cover all of the pen. If you've used a permanent pen, you want to cover it up with your stitches. If you find it's not covering, go to another strand, make your thread a little bit thicker, so 3 strands or a slightly thicker thread of something else. And I'm going to do tiny stitches for this, nice small ones, and get these nice curves of the letter. So it's back stitch, so the same as before, ahead of myself. I'm going to go back down at the end of that previous one. So these are small stitches. We're making small labels. Make them as big as you want. Don't have to do it this size. It is printed this side for the smaller ones, but if you want larger ones, you can enlarge the letters. So nice fine back stitch all the way round. So just take your time, get it as neat as you can. Nice small stitches, get those curves nice and curvy. And I'm just going to basically work my way around all of that. So I'll get to the end of the S and then I'll show you one more thing you can do just to make your letters pop a little bit more. So I've worked the A as well, so you've got a little bit of a comparison, but I'm going to go back to the S. And if you think it's not quite showing enough, you want it to pop a little bit more, you can whip around your back stitch. So I'm just going to whip the thread around each of those back stitches. Keep that still so you can see. So I'm literally going to go underneath each stitch. I'm not going through the fabric this time, underneath. I'm going to take my thread around, come back over there and underneath the next one, and that will just make your words, your letters a little bit more prominent, you know, to see them a little bit more easily. So you can do that as well if you want to. So keep going from the same side and going round and round that thread to the end, and then I'm going to take that back through to the back. So you can see that that S stands out a little bit more than the A does. So it's a nice little tip there just to make your letters stand out a little bit more. So I'm going to finish stitching these letters, but just before I do that I want to go back to the sampler and show you what happens if you stitch it beforehand. So I've gone through all of the layers of this, it's really nice and secure, but if you want it to have a little bit of a different effect you can stitch your letters before. So I've done that with this forage word. So I've stitched it on my plain fabric first, stitched it on that, then I've cut it out, and then I've stitched it down onto my sampler so it doesn't go all the way through to the back. You can see where the label is, it's completely blank on that, whereas this forest one here, that's the back of that, you can see the lettering has gone all the way through. So that's a sort of more of a quilted effect, and this one's actually stands out a little bit more, it stands a bit proud, which can be quite a nice effect. It looks like you've got your label on the top, so you can do it that way as well if you want to. Again, I've got the pattern behind it, put a bit of running stitch around that one to make that one a bit more decorative. So there's lots of different ways you can do these labels. So I'm going to go back and finish this one, then we'll have a look and see what that looks like when I've done that. So I finished stitching the words on this, so if you stuck around to the very end of this video, is a little bit of an extra bonus for you because I've done some extra stitching on it. But let's just look at the words, the letters first. So I have done that whipped back stitch that I showed you at the beginning. I've done it throughout the whole piece. It just helps the letters to look a bit less stitchy and a bit more like you've written them yourself. You've written them in thread. So really nice stitch to do for that, and I've added some extra details in around here. So I've done another row of running stitch around the edge and one on the inside, just picking up the colours from my sampler underneath, and I put some beads and some sequins in the corner, done a bit of herringbone up here and a bit of running stitch around here just to tie it all in together so you can see how that looks. And if you want to have a go at these letters and make yourself some labels, you can download that PDF. Don't forget the link is in the description below this video. If you enjoyed letters and you'd like to see some more letters, check out this playlist up here. Lots of other videos on how you can tackle words and how you can tackle lettering in embroidery. I hope you've enjoyed this video and you want to have a go at these fun little labels. If you've enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up and I'll see you next time.